else joins us. So here's what we're going to do today. I want to get started on the poetry paper, which is the first paper we're going to do. So for some of you, this will feel a little bit familiar. You probably have all written about poetry before. The challenge for this class for English 102 is that you have to have 3 sources from the library databases and use them in your paper. So you have to both be able to use the databases to find good sources and be able to cite those in your paper. So we're going to kind of work through this whole process. So today we're going to kind of start looking at poetry, and what we're going to do today, there's a link, and I'm going to go ahead and show you that link, and we'll just go through. It's basically the lecture that I post for my online classes and what we would have done in class today if we were actually meeting in class. And then on Monday, we're going to do research together. So I'm going to walk you guys through doing your research in the databases. So it's really important, as I mentioned on Monday, that everyone just stays on track. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do over the weekend is to choose a poem. And there's an anthology that's here in the class, and I'll show you where that is, that you can choose any of the poems from there. If you don't find anything you like, that's okay. If you find something on poetry.org, or if you've got some other poem that you really like, that's fine too. Just email me through Canvas and make sure you check and make sure it's okay before you move forward with that poem, okay? But there's a pretty good variety in the class. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so just a reminder, in order to get to the assignments, you have to go to click here for assignments. And something that I realized that I didn't mention on Monday is in week 1, in the reading tab, there are 4 things that you need to look at: the syllabus, the class calendar, the time required, and then the tips and tricks for English 102 success. And you have to mark those 4 pages done. So there'll be a little thing at the top right, and it'll say mark as done, and you need to do that or you won't be able to go to week 2. So make sure you do that, okay? Don't forget to do that. And then, but this is where, for those of you guys who weren't here on Monday, this is where you have to go to get all of your assignments. You can't use the Canvas calendar because it's not going to give you all the assignments you have to do. You have to go to the weekly assignment pages and click through each of the tabs. And in general, they're in the order that you should complete assignments. So remember, complete your reading over the weekend. So for week 2, then you're going to go in on Friday and do your reading for next week. You should post your first discussion on Monday and work on your writing assignment, which will be due on Thursday. So for this week, because of all the craziness, all the writing assignment and the journal assignment are extended to Saturday at midnight. So you have extra time on both of those assignments, but the discussion is still due. The discussion is still due on Thursday. So make sure you get in and do that. I noticed yesterday that only one person, Connor, good job, had posted his introduction. So it's just an introduction to you. It's not a hard assignment. So make sure you go in there and do that, especially since we don't get to be in class and do the fun game where I learn everyone's names. So it's really important to go in there and see who else is in the class and say hi, especially right now when we're all supposed to be kind of isolated. It's good to have that interaction with other people in a way that you can kind of say hi and not feel like you're just out there in your dorm room or whatever by yourself. Okay, and then the quiz I think is just a check-in, and I think that's open-ended, but make sure you do that. All you have to do is say, yes, I'm here. It's not a really hard quiz. It's just a check-in. Okay, so now that we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and go to week 2. So I'm going to just go back to the home page and click on the assignments link again. And we're in module 2, so this is week 2. So, and you can see what I've done here also is this is where I'll put the Zoom links. So in case you guys can't join us at 11 o'clock for any reason, once I get the links for the recordings, I'll post them right here also, so you can just see right off the bat what we're going to cover in class. So on Monday, we'll do research and a review of MLA citation. And then on Wednesday, we'll work on creating an outline for your paper. So you can see we're moving really, really fast. So it's important to stay tuned in, but I'll also post the links there as soon as I get them. So if you miss class, you don't have to freak out. You can just go watch the link, okay? But what we're going to do, if you look at the reading page for week 2, you can see that I have reading for Monday. So those are the things that you would have needed to read prior to class. And right here is the poetry anthology, and that's when where I'm saying you can go there. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and open that for you guys so you can see. So there are a lot of poems in here that we're going to be reading together, but also a ton of poets. So you can choose any poem from any of these poets for your assignment. And then if there's someone else that you wanted, another poet or another poem you want, again, just send me a message here in Canvas and let me know, okay? So you can see that if we were going to be in class, we would have covered the intro to poetry. I was planning to do that next week, but we're gonna do that today instead. And then, so we're moving everything up, so which I was going to do anyways, but this way we have more time to work on this first assignment especially. Okay, so if you guys want to follow along with me, you can just kind of scoot your Zoom over, or you can just watch this and then look at this resource later, but I wanted you to see where okay, so we're gonna watch a video real quick and that will start us off.
We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race, and the human race is filled with passion. Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. Poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. To quote from Whitman, a verse. What will your verse be?
Okay. Let's see. All right, so what I like to talk about in class is that a lot of English teachers over time teach poetry in such a way that it makes it not very fun. A lot of people lose their enjoyment of poetry because they feel like they are having to just figure out some secret hidden meaning in a poem, and it's hard. But poetry is meant to be an expression of someone's heart, like what they're feeling, what they're thinking. Most of the time, a poem is not some secret mystery that the author is like, okay, I have this secret that I want to put in this poem and I'm going to make it as hard as possible for people to figure it out. That's not what they're writing poetry. They're writing poetry because they want to express their thoughts in a beautiful way that other people can understand and relate to. So when we read poetry, the first thing that we want to do is we want to enjoy it first. You want to read the poem just to enjoy it. See how you connect to it. So we usually have two meanings in a poem, or there can be multiple meanings, but there's the author and what they were trying to convey. Then there's you as a reader, what you get out of it. And so those are the things that we want to try to balance, because sometimes we have folks who, I had a friend of mine in high school, and whenever we talked about poetry, every poem was about death or suicide. It didn't matter what it was. It could be about, you know, a parade or something. Everything was about that because that was just who she was at that moment in her life. The problem is that she could say that all she wanted, but there is no way to prove that given what the poem said. So as long as the poem can support your interpretation, then it's okay if you get something a little bit different out of it than what the author actually intended, but you have to be able to support those ideas with what's actually in the poem, okay? So here is, I really like this because this girl with the crazy hair, she has a fun accent, but she talks about how songs use elements of poetry, and that's kind of what we're working on next. So,
over the daft idea that poetry is somehow boring or difficult or scary. Poetry isn't scary. Lyrics are just poetry set to music. So when your English teacher talks about metaphors or similes, don't immediately assume that these terms are just something that some stuffy old poet writes in some stuffy old English book. You may not realise it, but you actually already understand metaphors. For example, when Katy Perry says, "Baby, you're a firework, come on, let your colours burst," you know she's not saying that you're literally a bit of packaged gunpowder. You know she's saying that you're an amazing, vibrant person and you should let everyone see your wonderful potential. You're a firework. So it's a metaphor. And when you first heard the song, you probably understood that without even trying. Similes aren't just something your English teacher talks about either. Rihanna uses similes too. Hold me like a pillow, make me feel right. So now that we've got rid of the idea that there is anything weird, scary or outdated about poetry, here is my homemade formula. Watch and listen carefully for 5 minutes and you'll never have to be stuck in a poetry test again. The secret formula is called Art Wars. The A in Art Wars stands for about. Explaining what the poem is about is probably the first thing you would do if you were writing an analysis. But it may well be the last thing you work out when you see a poem for the first time. So to help us work out what the poem might be about, we're going to look at the rest of Art Wars. First of all, we're going to look out for ideas that are repeated. Repeated ideas. A repeated idea is sometimes called a theme. For example, let's take a look at Rihanna's Take a Bow. Can you see how ideas about the theatre are repeated? Oh, how about a round of applause, a standing ovation? This just looks like a rerun, but you put on quite a show, curtains finally closing. That was quite a show, very entertaining, but it's over now, and the award for the best liar goes to you. Let's hear your speech. So ideas about the theatre are repeated. We suggest to the reader that Rihanna's relationship was just a show. The love was never real. Clever, huh? Bruno Mars gives us another example of a repeated idea or theme. I'd catch a grenade for you, throw my hand on a blade for you. I'd jump in front of a train for you. You know I'd do anything for you. I would go through all this pain, take a bullet straight through my brain. Yes, I would die for you, baby, but you won't do the same. Look how ideas about war and pain are repeated. This helps to give the impression that the couple's relationship is unpleasant and full of conflict. Okay, the next thing we need to consider is the tone of the poem. This means working out what the mood of the speaker is. Let's look at the Ting Tings lyrics. They call me hell. They call me Stacy. They call me her. They call me Jane. That's not my name. That's not my name. That's not my name. That's not my name. We can sense that the speaker is angry, can't we? But what tells us this? Well, the fact that there's a lot of repetition in the song creates an angry poem. They call me hell. They call me. They call me. That's not my name. That's not my name. That's not my name. Also, look at how short the lines are. This gives a fast, angry pace to the poem. And sometimes the words chosen can create a certain mood. For example, the word hell might make us think of angry swearing. When you're writing a poem analysis, it's always good to comment on the effect of particular words. Have a look to see which words are especially interesting. For example, the word firework in Katy Perry's line, "Baby, you're a firework," makes the reader imagine something beautiful, powerful, awesome. And look at the word heart in Lady Gaga's Poker Face. Love, game, intuition, play the cards with spades to start. And after he's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on his heart. Heart makes us think she's going to make a play for his heart, but also suggests she's playing a gambling game, perhaps by hiding how she really feels about him. Because we think about hearts as in the type of cards in a set of playing cards. Another great tip for analysing a poem you've never seen before is to pick out and comment on a poetic technique like alliteration. Remember, alliteration is where you get letter sounds repeated. Look at all the alliteration in Cheryl Cole's song. Anything that's worth having is sure enough worth fighting for. Quitting's out of the question. When it gets tough, gotta fight some more. Can you hear how the alliteration, the repetition of consonants, creates a rhythm of punching or pounding to make us think of fighting? The next part of Art Wars is rhyme and rhythm. People often forget to think about rhyme and rhythm when they analyse a poem. And this is a shame because it can really impress the examiner. In fact, the rhyme and rhythm can give you all sorts of clues as to the message the poet wants to get across. Look at the strange rhymes in Adele's song. Down now, shy light, uninvited, fight it, beg, said, flies, lives. The rhymes are half rhymes, aren't they? They're not quite right. Just like her relationship is not quite right. Her relationship is not working properly. So the broken rhyme reflects the broken relationship. Isn't that clever? Look at how Kesha uses rhythm. The poem is about time ticking away, and Kesha has very cleverly written the whole thing in a tick-tock rhythm. Listen. Tick-tock on the clock, but the party don't stop. No, don't stop. Make it pop. DJ, blow my speakers up. Tonight, I'm a fight till we see the sun light. Tick-tock on the clock, but the party don't stop. Finally, looking at the structure of the poem is really important. Looking at structure means looking at the way the poem is put together and the order in which ideas are shared. Look at the structure of Silo's Forget You. The speaker starts off trying to convince the reader that he is over his girlfriend, but by the end of the poem, he makes it quite clear that he is desperate to have her back. So hopefully now you've worked out what the poem is about by doing all of those things, and you can start writing your essay using.
Okay, so basically what I want you guys to see is that you already are familiar with all of these terms that we're going to talk about. Okay, you already have seen what a metaphor is. You already know what a simile is. All of these things, even if you haven't studied them or you don't remember the terms for them, it's kind of like when we talk about grammar. Those of you who are in 101 with me last session, grammar is something that you know from the time you're born. Okay, you know how to speak, therefore you know grammar. You might not know all of the terms, and so grammar seems intimidating, but really you already know it. You just have to learn what to call things. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing with the elements of poetry. Okay, so elements of poetry, speaker versus the poet. So first of all, remember that the person speaking in the poem might not be the author. The speaker is the person who's speaking in the poem. The speaker is not necessarily the poet. Okay. Diction, word choice creates a tone. So here's another example, belly button versus navel versus umbilicus. We have different ways to talk about the same thing. Some of them are, you know, you might talk about a belly button with your little ones. A navel is like your turn, umbilicus, like I don't know who uses that, a doctor. So it just depends on what kind of tone you're trying to create. Those choices that an author makes reflect their attitudes about themselves, their subjects, and their audiences. So it's really important, especially in poetry, to pay attention to what words are chosen. How were the words meant to sound? So think about that. Did the words sound playful? Do they sound angry? Are they talking to you in a confidential kind of way? Is it ironic? Those are the kinds of things that you want to look for. Oops. There we go. Okay, so figurative language. My love is a rose. That would be a metaphor, okay, because it's comparing two unrelated things without the use of like or as. So she's a train wreck. Same thing. It's specifically saying that she is a train wreck. So that was like that firework example, right? Similes are the same thing as metaphors, except they use like or as. So she sings like a bird. And then personification, again, gives human characteristics to an inanimate object. So umbrellas clothe the beach. So it's making the beach sound like a person who's wearing the clothing of the umbrellas. Make sense? Okay, verbal irony is an overstatement or a hyperbole. So all the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. It was said by Lady Macbeth. So I think she had murdered somebody. And so she was saying that there was nothing she could do to make her hands clean again. And then it could also be an understatement. So Sylvia Plath called suicide the big striptease. Okay, so very much an understatement there. A paradox is an apparent contradiction. So amorous, birds of prey are, you know, out killing other animals or eating other animals, and they're calling them loving. So there's a contradiction there, is what they're saying with that. Okay, then structure. Look at the lines. Each line of the poem is not necessarily a complete thought. And the stanzas, remember, are the paragraphs of a poem. So when you're talking about a poem, you can say in stanza 1, in stanza 2, or you can talk about lines. So in line, the author says, okay? Look for rhymes. Look for alliteration. Bring me my bow of burning gold. You can see how there's all the B's in the beginning of the words. So alliteration is basically the opposite of the rhymes. So a rhyme is when the end of the word sounds the same. Alliteration is when the beginning sounds of the words are the same. Assonance is kind of like a rhyme. It's a half rhyme. And the video that we just watched talked about that a little bit. So like tide and mine have the same vowel sounds, but they don't really rhyme, right? We have the tie and the my, but the da and the n don't rhyme. So it's close to a rhyme. And sometimes that can mean something and sometimes it doesn't. Consonance is when you have the same consonant sounds but different vowel sounds. So like fail and feel and rough and roof, the beginning and the end sounds are the same, but the middle sounds are different. And then onomatopoeia is when the word sounds like it is. So hiss, buzz, bark. You guys can think of all of those things. Okay, so I know that was really fast, but that's why I wanted you guys to see where your resources are. So remember, you've got the videos, and then you also have this PowerPoint that you can go through. And then this is something you can do on your own. If you want to review all of the different elements of poetry, you can go through this little poetry review here, and it's just kind of a little self-quiz. And we're going to go ahead and go back. So next week, in week 2, you guys will do a quiz on the elements of poetry. So you don't have to do that this week, okay? This week you're just doing week 1 assignments, but the quiz in week 2 is on those elements of poetry, and you have until next Thursday to take that. So if you feel like you want to just take care of it right now because you just learned about it, you should be able to skip ahead to week 2 and do that as long as you marked those 4 pages done. If you didn't do that, it's going to say you haven't met the requirements. So just make sure you do that. And again, you do not have to do that. I'm just letting you know that there is a quiz on what we covered today. And so if you want to take that while it's fresh in your mind, you're welcome to do that. So what I want you guys to do for Monday, for next week, is make sure you read the readings in week 2. So for Monday, it's the introduction to poetry, how to read a poem. These textbook pages, there's 4 of them. You only have to read 21 to 25. So there's 14 pages here, but you only have to read 4 for Monday. And then there's a couple of other poems that you want to read. But the most important thing I want you to do for Monday is I want you to choose your poem. So you need to choose the poem that you're going to be writing about. My advice for you here is do not choose a poem that is 2 lines long, because you will not be able to write 1,500 words about a 2-line poem, okay? You don't have to choose a super long poem, but you need to choose a poem that has enough length that you're going to be able to write about it. And one of the benefits of choosing an author or a poem that's already in the anthology is that most of those people are going to have articles written about them. So it will be really easy to find sources when we do that on Monday. Okay, so make sure you have your poem picked out so that when we go through finding a source in the database on Monday, you'll actually be able to find sources on Monday and you won't be scrambling later to try to remember what we covered in class on Monday. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so the other thing, if you would like to do this, well, actually, no, we're gonna just talk about that later. But so all you have to do for Monday then, finish the stuff for this week, of course, this week. So remember, the discussion is due Thursday. The check-in quiz, I think, is probably due Thursday, although it might be open-ended. And then the reading journal and the writing assignment, the letter to yourself, is due on Saturday by midnight. So you have extension this week on those 2 writing assignments. And then read for Monday and pick your poem. So Monday, when we get together at 11 o'clock, we're going to go through how to use the databases, and I'll walk you all through finding some sources for your poems. Okay?
Okay.
Yep.
All right, does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions?
Nope.
Everybody's good? If you need anything, let me know. I sent out a thing on Remind. yc.edu/IAMYC. There's the food pantry on campus. They also have emergency funds for grants for students. So if you need anything, they have emergency grants. So if you need help with food or gas or baby supplies or a utility bill, whatever you need, that's available. Okay, so yc.edu/IMYC. And if you need anything, please let me know, because I might be able to help you, or I can figure out who can. Okay, so don't, even if it's not about the class, just let me know. Okay. All right. Okay, guys, that's all I have for you today. If you don't have any questions. Did you have a question, Ramon?
No, nothing.
Okay, so I'll be online for office hours for the next couple of hours. I can't guarantee that there won't be a 3-year-old playing the piano, but I will be online. So if you need me, you get there the same way. Just click the Zoom link and you should see office hours as a choice, and you just click join, and I'll hear a bell and I'll know that someone's there. If I don't answer right away, just be patient. I probably had to go take care of the 3-year-old. So, but I'm around for the next couple hours, okay?
Okay.
All right, guys, have a good weekend, and I will see you on Monday.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.